Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Blake, founder and CEO, Atlas Strategy Group.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is a blessing to be with you once again at Concordia. Thank you, of course, to Matthew, to Hannah, to Nick, to the entire team. And I am grateful that we're able to have this moment to reflect once again on the direction of where we're going. I wish I was there with you in person. I am actually here in the Bronx as we get ready for a critical announcement that's going to happen with the EPA Administrator, Regan, and others locally. I bring you greetings also on behalf of Next Level Sports and Entertainment, the first ever Black and people of color sports-owned TV network in our country, which represents and has 21 million households in the US and 101 million globally. So follow us at Next Level. And thank you to the entire team, from Andre Gudger, our CEO, Liam Banks, Corinne, May, to everyone that's been a part of the work. We say thank you. Allow me to dive into what we are focusing on today. And you can continue with the presentation at this time. Where do we go from recovery to reimagining? It is important to understand Atlas, Atlas being the name of our work and our team. On the next slide, it shows you the vision of what Atlas means. Atlas demonstrates the Greek Titan, the Titan who had the world on his shoulders. You can proceed to the next slide, please. It demonstrates who we are and what we're trying to do. And as we come together in this moment, during this UN General Assembly week, during this moment of the Concordia Summit, all of us are experiencing the weight on our shoulders, or what are we doing in our respective communities to empower our communities. But I want you to internalize this. In the challenges we've all faced, whether it be in the South Bronx or in South America, it is the understanding that it is time for us to go from recovery to reimagining. Next slide, please. In this moment of this transition, we think about the two pandemics. Pandemic of COVID-19, yes, but also the pandemic of COVID-16-19, which Senator Warnock said powerfully, that we are battling two different dynamics. What is happening when we say, I can't breathe because of the physical challenges in our communities, while simultaneously saying we can't breathe because of racial injustice. And if we are focused on going from recovery to reimagining, all of us as leaders across our communities and across our cities and countries have to understand that both of these pandemics must be addressed and rooted out in real time. Next slide, please. So where do we go? How do we do this? The understanding of whether it be George Floyd, or the reflections of seeing what's going on with our essential workers. And thank you to all of our essential workers across our countries, all across the world, who have helped save us, whether it be making sure you're able to vote and demonstrating that, yes, democracy is on the front lines. We must go from recovery to reimagining. Why? Because it's not enough for us to talk about a pandemic. It is time for us to talk about the promise. Next slide. So where do we go? And how do we mobilize? You will never know how much you value your breath until you can't breathe. As someone who experienced COVID myself, as a person who couldn't go to one of my sister's funerals in London, as someone who saw what was going on in the South Bronx, we are tired of always seeing how people are unable to breathe. And yet we understand that if you have breath in your body, if you're able to come to a Concordia Summit, if you're able to mobilize in the ways that we are, let us use every breath in our body to go from recovery to reimagining. Think about this. If I have a day, will I use that day so it be one that I shall never forget? That is how I'll use the breath in my body as we move forward from recovery to reimagining. Next slide. So what does that mean? That means it's a time for making amends for what has happened before and understanding that you have to utilize financial resources to transform our communities. Many times we talk about reparations, but we have not internalized what it means to repair. How are we repairing from the damage that have been caused for not just days or weeks or months, but for centuries? And so the opportunity must be, how do we utilize financial investments to transform our communities? Next slide. So that means then to transition and to mobilize and to amplify that, yes, reparations is something that may make some uncomfortable, but this is the opportunity to be demonstrated by financial investments in our communities. Next slide, please. So as we determine what has been happening across the globe, there's enough examples to demonstrate this. But for some reason in the United States of America, there's been discomfort and hesitancy. Now, in large part, it may feel because of what's going on between the Black community and white community and others. However, we have enough examples to demonstrate that there has to be a financial investment to transform our communities, to go from recovery to reimagining. Why is that? Because it's not that someone just can't breathe because of what's going on within their body. It's because of the lack of investments in their homes. You can't have social distancing if there's 7 people living in a home where you have lead paint and lead water. You can't expect for someone to believe in a healthcare system where you had Tuskegee and lack of health addressing disparities. You can't expect for children to believe everything will be possible when they don't have internet in their homes. So there has to be the financial investments that have been demonstrated across our globe. Next slide, please. So the quality of being fair and impartial, what does that mean? It means equity, demonstrating that there's a responsibility that happens when there is equity. And that is what we will achieve from going from recovery to reimagining. If there is nothing else you take away from my words today, appreciate the point that at the same time that we're dealing with COVID-19 and COVID-19, we have the opportunity to reflect on focusing on equity. It is not enough to focus on equality. It is essential to achieve equity. Next slide, please. So in this moment of equity, proceed to the next one, please. It's that understanding of how do you demonstrate that? And there are many ways that we're utilizing that. As I mentioned, next level, this is the opportunity here. Sports and entertainment. For too many times, people have only been focused on being the players and the athletes and not the owners and the presidents. Washington football team, the first Black president ever of an NFL team. Monroe College, achieving the highest graduation rates for Black students and top 3 in Latino students in New York State. National Democratic Training Committee, focusing on mobilizing the next generation. ACLMA, how do we have a Latino community, country, and organization to demonstrate that I should be able to detect air pollution in real time? AquaSite, Mahesh Lonani, great CEO, focusing on water, because at the end of the day, I should have fresh water and understand what's going on in my water systems. Block Power, demonstrating that I have to transform the buildings in our communities to achieve what's happening. In order to repair, in order to recover, in order to reimagine, we must bring equity and justice to scale. If there is nothing else you take away from this moment, it is our time for equity. Next slide, please. So when you think about how do you achieve that, break it down in the vision of the 3 E's. Economic development, as we demonstrated from the Washington football team to Next Level Sports and Entertainment. And I encourage everyone in the room to go find Next Level interview space and be interviewed and say, we are next level. Demonstrated from the space of education, from Monroe College to also the training and development that has to happen right now for our local leaders. And in equity, whether it be in water, whether it be in energy, whether it be with Promise, an entity led by Phaedra Ellis Lampkins, making it easier for cities and localities to actually connect with consumers to be able to pay their bills on time. If we are focused on going from recovery to reimagining, we have to achieve it through the 3 E's: economic development, education, and equity. Please, next slide. So as we transform, it's the appreciation that even if you're not Christian, it's that reflection as a person of faith of what was said in Luke 2:7. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, a son. She wrapped them in a wadding cloth and laid them in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Now, too often when people have heard this, they reflected on it wrong. Now, I was born on Christmas Day. Yes, I still get both gifts. I'm real clear about that. I want both of my gifts when I reflect on my celebration here. But it's that understanding that too often people internalize the scripture wrong. It never said there was no room at all. It said there was no room for them. If you think about the message I'm conveying to you today, it is time to make room for them, for the children, for the seniors, for the immigrants, for the women, for Black people, for Latino people, for all of our people. Make room for them. If we are focused on going from recovery to reimagining, it is time to have equity for them. Next slide, please. So, and I think about the words I say often. Your block won't block your blessing. Your zip code won't deny your destiny. Your block won't block your blessing. Your zip code won't deny your destiny. That is the vision of how we go from recovery to reimagining. Take the investments and say, we will transform our schools for the better. We will transform our society for the better. We will invest in communities, not just to get to 2019 and 2021, but to 2039 and to 2041. That is what happens when you focus on from recovery to reimagining. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day, I say thank you. Thank you for putting the world on your shoulders. Thank you for understanding that we are enduring two pandemics of COVID-19 and COVID-16-19. Thank you to Concordia Summit, understanding the impact of what is happening here. And so I say to you, as a child of the Bronx, as a son of Jamaican immigrants, in this moment of Concordia in 2021, it is time for us to say we will go from recovery to reimagining. So in the words of the great philosopher Fat Joe, nothing can stop you. I'm all the way up. My social media is on the handle right there, and we thank you and God bless you. Take care. Thank you, everyone.